Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to yet another video. We are going to continue on reading A Guide for Lightworkers by Archangel Michael, channeled and also written by Saratoga Ocean. We are going to be reading chapter 19 this evening, and we're going to be talking about the source of fear. So that's what Archangel Michael is going to speak to us about today. And as a reminder, I will ask that you set your intention to take this information in with your heart rather than with your mind, as I remind you before we begin any video reading this book, which I believe we're almost done with. I think we only have 3 more chapters. So let's go ahead and just keep on moving forward, okay? The source of fear. What is the greatest fear on earth? It is one that you possibly have never thought of because you have never successfully challenged it. The greatest fear on earth is the fear of questioning the so-called validity of your entire collective reality. That includes all of its physics, everything. Now, what does this mean? It basically refers to everything we have been talking about so far. Let us encapsulate it so that there is no confusion. God is eternal, infinite, omnipresent love. Everything that exists in all creation exists as a pure manifestation of that infinite love. Period. There are no exceptions. Now, the truth is that in your current state of consciousness, you think that this sounds nice but exceedingly boring. You subconsciously and even consciously believe that in such a condition of pure infinite love that there would be nothing to do except to just be. Thus, you really have little or no motivation to exist in such a place. You continue to keep it in the background of your consciousness, but you don't really want to get there. Why? Because in your way of looking at it, it is rather like the goalpost at the end of a football game. Once you reach it, the game's over. In your case, you believe that if you reach that place of pure, unadulterated love, then you and your entire universe as you know it would be over. Your erroneous view of this, that all would meld into this giant blob of love and light, and nothing else would exist after that. What fun is that after all? Allow me to call into question the entire underpinnings of your overall collective spiritual understanding. The first clue that you could be entirely off the track is that for thousands of years, you have portrayed the movements of God and the universe in a one-dimensional, linear fashion. So he's putting it in different, I guess you could say, handwriting, and he's saying this is what we're thinking. This is what we've come up with in our mind. God went out and separated into a whole bunch of different stars, planets, people, etc. Everything went away from God, and the whole idea is to eventually get back to God and merge back into the original state of oneness. That's where the giant blob of nothingness, or so-called eternal love, exists in this story. The scary thing about this story, which you have been telling yourselves for millenniums, is that a whole lot of pain and suffering motivates everyone to eventually go back to God. Now try to reason this out. If this God that you have created in this story were sitting around talking to itself, what would it be saying prior to this enormous saga? Now here's what Archangel Michael is thinking that I guess we think he's saying. Say, I have a good idea. I think I'll split myself up into a whole bunch of different parts and then throw them away from myself. This will cause a whole bunch of problems, pain, and suffering, which will then motivate those parts of myself to eventually return to me. Whoa, really? Dearest friends, I ask you to reason this out with yourselves and to be truly honest. Does this actually sound believable to you? Seriously. There are, of course, all kinds of linear variations on this theme. Some religions portray this as a gigantic cosmic game that God plays with itself. So here's what he's saying some religions might say. I think I'll create a bunch of humans, put them on Earth with every pitfall and hardship imaginable, and all kinds of pain and suffering possible. They will have no instruction manual. Then I'll have a whole bunch of different religions, giving them different sets of rules about what I really want. I'll even have them kill each other over this to cause more confusion. Then I'll punish them after death if they don't get it right, and I'll promise them rewards if they do. Of course, the odds of them getting it right will be so slim by the time I'm finished putting every conceivable obstacle in their way that only a handful will make it to heaven. The rest will likely be doomed for all eternity. Honestly, do you actually believe this? Friends of my dearest heart, does this sound ever so slightly like some sort of a very strange cartoon? The fact that all of your storylines are incredibly linear is your first clue that you are way off the track. The second clue is that you are way off the track The second clue that you are way off the track is that you believe that God would utilize fear and pain as a motivating force for anything. The third clue is that the way you have portrayed your so-called goal of merging back into oneness is so boring that even God itself would probably fall asleep. The fact, my dearest friends, is that you literally have no idea what you're talking about. That is not meant to be an insult. My intention is only to clear the path of all these erroneous assumptions. Certainly, you have already had many thousands of years to test these theories out. The real question is whether you are ready to let go of them yet. Where is the evidence that any of this is real? Have you ever thought of that? It is not that you must take my word for any of this. Your heart is your true seat of knowledge and love. If you learn to pay attention to it and assign it far more credibility than you already have, you might be very surprised by what you learn. Let us now discuss what I will term the ultimate and highly scientific true source of the existence of fear itself. What is the actual definition of fear? Quite simply, it is the literal experience of being separated from infinite, omnipresent love, or God. The mistake in your previous explanation for this is that God intentionally created this separation for a purpose. That is your mistake. First of all, it must be said that this experience of separation is an illusion. It is simply not possible on any level to be separate from omnipresent oneness. If that is so, then where does this experience of separation come from? Well, that is indeed the first brilliant question that you are capable of asking. Let us go back again to the story of the first original lie. The lie called I am not omnipresence. I am not infinite. Put another way, it says I am not love. This simple lie, which manifested, most definitely produced a very definite result in terms of physics. Let me explain, but before I do, I sense that there are some people who have a question, so allow me to respond to that first. How is it possible for God to create such a lie in the first place? God did not create such a lie. This lie only exists as a potentiality, albeit one that could never manifest in truth. That is precisely what makes it an illusion. You may not understand the subject of potentialities because you appear to be trapped inside one at this particular time and space. Even that is tricky to talk about because time itself is a grand illusion. In the meantime, it may be more effective for you to exercise your ability to sense things that exist at a higher level than what your current brain's structure can allow you to comprehend. At the present time, however, it is not necessary for you to know everything that is to know about such things. So let us talk about what is important to know. The logistics of this first original lie are really rather simple. In the real world of omnipresent love and infinite truth, everything that manifests and therefore exists as a statement of what it is. What do you think that ultimately is? Infinite love, of course. You do not see that manifesting in the finite world. Why not? Because the moment that you introduce the lie of I am not, you are essentially saying that something can be known by what it isn't, which of course is impossible. This is the reason that everything in the finite world exists in a state of pure and perfect mathematical division. Did you know that all of mathematics must start with division? The first act of division was created by the first original lie. When you say, I am not omnipresence, you have for the first time created two things instead of one. The original one is infinite. all-encompassing. To say I am not that is a lie that says you are something else, which is, of course, impossible. That is what makes it an illusion. Get that? So now, in that lie, the entire universe appears at its core as two things instead of one. The entire experience is now an illusion, a virtual dream. In this dream, there appear to be two things, God and I am not God, infinite and I am not infinite, love and I am not love. Do you see how silly and pointless this ultimately is? The problem with this lie is that in the illusion that it produces, there does not appear to be anything whatsoever that is infinite. The idea of infinite changes into a numerical factor and is perceived as a condition of unlimited numbers, all of which represent things that are separate from one another. The entire universe now exists as a numerical manifestation. This is only one example of the new laws of physics that get created by this lie. And it does create physics. Make no mistake about that. Dare I say that your scientists can only busy themselves with studying the physics of this first original lie. Wow. As far as the infinite God is concerned, there is no infinite God in the finite world. Why do you think you can't see or know this creator? Is it because it is hiding from you? Of course not. Remember that in this illusion, there are now two things instead of one. Neither of these two things is real. Therefore, God has now become a mere concept, something with defined lines. Where do you think the idea of the man in the sky with the white beard came from? You have to find some way to identify that which you cannot see or feel. It is interesting that with this illusion of a man in the sky is portrayed as someone who judges everyone as good or bad, right or wrong. Of course, this is the God of the ultimate duality created by what I will now refer to as the source of fear. Once this original lie is well in place, which is virtually in an instant, it creates the finite. The finite is that which is termed not infinite. If that were possible, which it isn't, it would mean that there is no such thing as infinite. The I am not resists the truth of the infinite, thereby creating an illusionary reality where all is finite and everything exists in separation from everything else. All things in that reality are known by what they are not. Thus, everything is inherently a threat to the identity of something else. Does that make sense to you? I feel like it's a lot of words, but it does make sense. I do understand that, yeah. Okay. Thus, you have war, conflict, division, and separation, and all of the pain and suffering that goes along with that. The apparent division from God creates the greatest pain. This is the reason that it is so easy to have so many different religions, all of which conflict with one another in some way or another. Even the God that you think you're divided from is not real. Can you get that? It is not possible to be divided from the true infinite God. In your grand illusion, there is God on one side of the fence and you are on the other. You pray to this God, hoping that he, she, it will have mercy on you and hoping that you will be heard. For those who feel a true connection to God, let me say this. This is where your true heart of hearts comes into play. This one true heart, as I've said before, is absolutely at one with reality. The problem is that you are so distracted and confused by all that exists in the duality of the finite that you rarely, if ever, connect with it. It has been reduced to a mere shadow of an experience that lives primarily in the background of your everyday life. In most cases, it remains completely unconscious. When you actually feel that real connection, it is because you may have stumbled upon waking up to the fact that you are actually permanently connected to that truth. What you need now is to become one with it. You need to wake up from the dream. For those who believe that death is the moment at which you wake up, I am sad to inform you that it isn't. How can I say that? Quite simply, if you are experiencing something called death, you are still existing in the very same illusion. As I said before, the afterlife is directly connected to the finite. You are still dealing with the duality of being alive and not alive. You are still residing in a universe of being here and not there. This should not depress you if you have loved ones residing in what you call the other side. There are many other sides in the finite universe. They exist all over the place in your everyday life. Have you noticed how much you long for the presence of those whom you love who have already passed over? Do you think there is something wrong with you for feeling this way? Of course there isn't. You and they will continue to have this longing to be together in the stable universe where all is infinite, and there is no such thing as separation and other sides. Other sides. If it is any comfort to you, know that you and your loved ones absolutely share the truth of the infinite real world. Whether you know it or not, you both or all reside there together right now. You are currently sharing a mutual dream of separation, and you will absolutely awaken from this shared illusion. In fact, you are already awake. You just don't know it from where you sit in this finite. Now let us talk specifically about the source of fear. The lie of I am not produces an immediate absence of precisely what it is that you are not. If what you are not is God, if what you are not is infinite, if what you are not is love, you will ultimately experience an absence of those things and ultimately an absence of yourself. The experience of this absence is what you call fear. Fear is simply an experience of the so-called absence of God. Since this is impossible, the experience is an illusion. I must caution you about something here. There are those who would wish to stop at this point and suggest that the simple answer whenever you feel fear is to simply remind yourself that it is merely an illusion. Ta-da, problem solved. Well, not exactly. Try it if you don't believe me. The source of fear, which is the first original lie, creates a boatload of physics. Your finite DNA is deeply embedded with those physics, as is everything else around you in the finite universe. In fact, fear is the life's blood of the ego. Thus, you are literally living the proverbial battle of Armageddon in your everyday life. You live that battle every time you feel anger, every time you allow the ego to intimidate you, and every time you allow the ego to intimidate or judge others. The goal in this discourse is to provide you with the opportunity to see if you are truly fed up with all of this. Why? Because when you are truly fed up, when you stop making excuses, when you stop blaming all of this on so-called guilty humans, or blaming it on God, the devil, or whatever other fantasy you may harbor, you will be left with facing the actual experience yourself. You will have the opportunity to exhibit genuine intolerance. Intolerance does not mean conflict in the sense that it is being used here. It means a state where you are truly connected with your own heart. It means that you have finally reached the mothership that you have so desperately been seeking. The mothership is by no means a physical ship in outer space. Good heavens, no. I'm very familiar with that idea, by the way. That mothership is in actuality the lifeline to the real world that is always present, always with you. It is your most precious, divine human heart. It is that which no one can take away from you. You may lose touch with it, but it is always there. You are permanently at one with the infinite love of God. The intolerance that I am referring to occurs when you experience and are true to your very own infinite heart of love. It occurs when you listen to what your heart has been trying to tell you for eons, that you are right when you feel that there should be no death, that you are right when you want to experience only peace, that you are right when you feel that all should be love forever and ever. The only thing that will ever tell you that you are wrong is the ego, which exists as the virtual agent for the source of fear itself. Let me address the subject that I brought up earlier when I said that the finite does not allow you to experience the truth about omnipresent oneness and infinite love. The absence of love, which is fear, only allows you to have a conceptual knowing of what this omnipresent love is. Because you don't experience it, since the thing that is the most real to you is the finite, you erroneously perceive that there is nothing there but a blob of love that goes on forever. You erroneously believe that if the problem of separation is solved and all has returned to a state of so-called oneness with this blob of love, then there will be nothing more to do. Basically, what this really translates into is a state of nothingness in your imagination. Therefore, you are not interested. You might be suffering now, but at least there's something going on, for heaven's sake. Who wants to merge with the blob and do absolutely nothing after that? There are more specific reasons for why things appear this way, but that will have to be saved for another time. For the purposes of this discussion, this is what is the most important for you to know. I'm sorry, my glasses keep falling. I think I need them tightened. Do not underestimate the power of the erroneous perception that I just described to entirely circumvent your will to eliminate this predicament of separation that you find yourselves in. I think otherwise he's trying to say, don't let that deter you away from, getting rid of fear in more words. Okay. It is nearly impossible to call up sufficient will from within yourself if you have a perception that solving the real issue will mean that you cease to exist in the oneness of the blob. On another occasion, I will explain what that really means, but for now, here is a clue. The only thing that will cease to exist for sure is your ego. You will remain fully intact, fully whole. Don't try to figure that out right now. For now, intolerance born of the heart is the main first step. I apologize. I thought he was talking about fear in this little area, but he wasn't when I was trying to shorten it for you a little bit. Okay. Let's address the issue of intolerance to make sure that you are really clear about what that means. Have you ever had an injury or an illness that caused you great strife and that you were not able to initially heal? Perhaps you tried everything you knew to accept that predicament and make the best of it because it fit in with your identity on some subconscious level. You may have become exceedingly frustrated when you realized the limitation that this physical situation was imposing on you. At that point, a person can sometimes reach a crossroads in their consciousness. Many people come to terms with the situation by accepting it and reworking their identities to include it. This is fine if that is your choice, but some will choose to evolve out of that particular expression of identity. They will feel in their hearts that such situations are intolerable and that expanding their ability to function is more important. They conclude that they simply cannot accommodate this thing in their lives any longer. This does not necessarily happen on a conscious level. It cannot be forced. It has more to do with who you are in terms of your own evolution and purpose. The intolerance that is experienced is not one of frustration. It is never born of conflict with the situation itself. It is more a sense of resolve that is not accompanied by effort. It exists in truth as a paradigm shift in consciousness. There is simply not room in the new paradigm for this predicament to continue to exist. What usually follows is a solution to the problem. This can come in the form of a treatment that was heretofore unknown to the person, a treatment that is ultimately successful. All manner of aid will often show up, and the person may marvel that this didn't happen before. The aid is often attributed to God or to answered prayers. In a manner of speaking, this may be true, but there is a lot more to it than that. These things do not happen in an environment of fear. Fear is the most debilitating part of the entire picture because fear is literally the experience of an illusion that you are completely separated from God. This is why, at the end of the last chapter, I asked if you were afraid to listen to your heart and truly accept what it has always been trying to tell you. The ego does not want you to ever listen to your heart. It will belittle it and convince you that it is of no consequence. It will tell you it is dangerous to listen to something that doesn't understand or agree with the finite principles of the finite universe. The ego lives in fear of its own demise. Its entire motivating force is survival. That is why it finds a finite body so well suited to its finite self. The body, too, lives only to survive. Its entire programming is to try to stay alive no matter what. That is why the ego's greatest fear is for you, in your true self, to cease sanctioning death as an important spiritual experience. The finite body and the ego are perfectly suited for one another. They both exist in mortal fear of their own destruction. The body's chemical composition is specifically structured to avoid death. Its fight or flight reaction patterns are there for exactly the same purpose. The drive to reproduce is precisely tied into this need to survive. It is the only way to have death and life exist in the same reality. Let us complete this part of things by discussing the reality behind this massive universal illusion. Contrary to the ego's need for you to see that reality as a seeming blob of oneness, where nothing really happens because all is love, the real world is vastly different. Do you think that the infinite God does not create infinite beingness? There are multiple universes of infinite life. There is no way for you to comprehend what happens there in your currently divided state. It is simply not within your current realm of consciousness to know. But suffice it to say that pain, suffering, death, and illusion do not exist in that real world of truth and infinite love. One of the hallmarks of the ego is to convince you that all there is to know should be known by you in your infinite state. But this is delusional if you think about it. All you can know in the infinite is that which is infinite. All you can know in your current state of consciousness is that which exists in that very same state of consciousness. Can you possibly recognize that even this finite universe is far too expansive to exist only for the purpose of accommodating the potential knowledge of one very tiny species on one very tiny planet? If the gargantuan nature of all of this overwhelms you, do not allow yourself to be distressed. Please remember that your simple divine heart of hearts is always connected to and is at one with the infinite love. And the infinite love that creates all that is real. You can never be lost. You can always be at peace knowing that nothing can ever remove you from that truth. If you were aware enough, you would know that you could relax at any time in the sheer tranquility of this experience. It's called surrender. But in order to have surrender, you must first have awareness. And more than anything else, that awareness needs to lead to a sincere surrender in knowing that it is okay not to know everything because you already are connected to all that matters. Remember that all you really want is love, not the love of this finite reality, which is always fickle at best. What you want and need is a conscious experience of the true and infinite love of God. In fact, what you really desire is to be that love. This is the true security that you seek, and I am here to tell you that you have it. Okay, so that was a little bit longer of a chapter. Thank you so much, Archangel Michael, for sharing that. Lots of these things really hit home for me, and maybe for you as well. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, this was a bit longer of a chapter, but very, very helpful, very informative. So we've got, I think, 2 chapters left after this. We have chapter 20, which is called Conclusion, and chapter 21, Light. And then we will be all through listening and reading this beautiful book, which I hope has helped even just one of you. So again, thank you so much for joining me. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I would appreciate it, and I would love to see that. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Take care of everyone around you. Take care. Bye-bye.